one of the reasons I got into business is because I lost my father at 19 years old. Um, and losing him really made me realize how short life is, how important it is to do something you love. Because growing up as a kid, I watched both of my parents absolutely hate their job. um, and I always knew I didn't want to be that person who got up and went to a 9 to 5 and lived for nights and weekends. I didn't want to have that life of, I just wish it was 5 o'clock so I could go home kind of life.
Right.
So I always knew I wanted to be in business.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we'll be discussing all things business, and we're joined by Danielle Dill. Danielle, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Danielle, we always like to start off by learning more about the person we're having the discussion with. So we're going to start off by asking, who is Danielle Dill?
I am a web designer who got started in high school, really. It was something I would do after school. I'd come home and I would try to teach myself how to learn coding languages for fun. That was my after school hobby, as if all of my honors and AP classes weren't enough at that point. So that's kind of where I started, and I drifted away from it for a couple of years, and then I got back into it. So one of the reasons I got into business is because I lost my father at 19 years old. And losing him really made me realize how short life is, how important it is to do something you love. Because growing up as a kid, I watched both of my parents absolutely hate their job. And I always knew I didn't want to be that person who got up and went to a 9 to 5 and lived for nights and weekends. I didn't want to have that life of, I just wish it was 5 o'clock so I could go home kind of life.
Right.
So I always knew I wanted to be in business. So a couple of years later, when I had the courage and I felt like I was ready, I went back to school and got my associate's degree in web design. And then I started doing websites locally where I live for some people. My brother is the first person who actually gave me a break. I'm like, I'm not even graduated yet. He's like, I need your help. I'm like, okay, sure. He ran a heating and air business. So that was the first one I had done. So I've done a wide variety locally of stuff. And over the years, I have fallen into this thought, I guess you could say, where I have a passion for helping other entrepreneurs do what they love to do. And I have seen far too many other web designers and things like that in the design field where they take advantage of people. I have a client that I'm doing a site for right now, and years ago she paid a pretty penny to someone for a site that she wanted to be able to use, and she couldn't use it at the end. She's like, it was beautiful, but I couldn't use it myself. And I hate to see business owners in this kind of rat race of, well, I have to make the money to go pay the web designer to put me on their schedule so that they can do the update to my site. And I hate to see that. My philosophy is, it's your business. You should be able to do what you want with your website and at least have those skills where you know how it's done, especially in the beginning, because when you're just starting, you can't afford to go paying a designer to build your site and then to do all the updates. So I have always had this philosophy of, I should not have complete control over your site, because then I think back to the pandemic and how many businesses at the beginning were, they were putting out deals and throwing different packages together, trying to keep money flowing in the business. And to be able to do that on your website, like this without relying on a designer. You have to have that ability to do it yourself, or at least have someone on your team do it for you. But if you don't know how to do it, how are you going to have someone on your team do it?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, thing I'm kind of curious to know, just from my own experience, having done a couple of websites, simple ways, using either GoDaddy or Squarespace. How do you avoid making it look like you did it yourself as an entrepreneur?
That is always the crux of it. Part of it is in the tool that you pick and learning that tool. And that's one of the things that will take you the most time. But if you pick the tool that can give you the best options for design, it will give you more freedom to do more with it. And I think of things like Wix. Wix is a great tool for many people. I have a passion for hating it. I really don't like their whole, oh, you want to have this? Well, you got to pay us extra.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, why? I just don't like that model. So part of it is learn the tool that you're going to use. And then what I love to do is get inspiration from other sites. It's one of the things I take my clients through. I have them give me a couple of websites that they love and tell me what they do and don't like about it. And then I weave those things into their branding to make a custom site that matches the design they like. So it's part of it is comparing and getting an idea of what you like and knowing your tool. And the other part of it is plan it out in advance. So when I went to build my first website for my first business, I was like, okay, I'm going to start building. And then I was like, what am I building? So it's always this, and I'm a planner by my nature. My husband is the go with the flow kind of person, and I am so the planner. And so for me, it's always, I need a plan. What am I building? What's my vision for it? Where am I going with it? And that helps too, because it helps it look more cohesive from page to page.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at, as a business owner, for people, I guess the misconception is if you don't spend a lot of money on your advertising or what have you, it's not a good business, or, it's not the best that can possibly be, right? So for somebody who would like to go this route and, you say, like GoDaddy and things like that, what are the differences between not spending a pretty penny and, staying within the person's budget? Are they able to pull something really great off too?
They are. It takes research. The hardest thing is if you're not going to invest a ton of money, because I know in the beginning a lot of businesses don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to have to invest time, because that's the big thing in business. It's you're either investing money or time, mm-hmm. or both. So investing time to, like I mentioned, learn the tools that you're using to build your site and really researching them even before you invest in anything. It's totally possible to build a website. I am exclusively a WordPress designer, mm-hmm. because I always feel that your website, even if you start with a simple one-page site when you're just getting going, I feel that your website should be something that gives you the option to expand as you go, and then not trap you to where you now have to move platforms 2, 3, or 4 years down the line whenever you're making enough that you need something more than that platform can deliver.
Right.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of WordPress, because it really has the ability to do a ton of things for now and in your future for any business. And I build websites with Elementor. It's a page builder. It is my favorite page builder. It's very user-friendly. I've used things like Divi in the past, and my favorite is Elementor. And I think for like $50 a year, you can get access to it, to the whole pro version. And really, it can build an entire website. So for $50, and I remember when I first got started in the blogging world and the online business world, a lot of the talk was around buying a premium WordPress theme. And I'm like, so for less than the cost of a premium WordPress theme, you can have a far more custom website. So it's, every website has to have that theme, because it's that base set of rules. But it's about doing that research. A lot of people buy that premium theme and then go, well, it doesn't look like the demo. Why doesn't it look like the demo site? When if you have a different tool and if you've researched beforehand, you have the option to build a completely custom thing as long as you learn that tool. And Elementor is great on their YouTube channel about walking people through how to use different elements of the builder.
Awesome. Now, the one thing that you had mentioned was, you were talking about getting started. You did the first site for your brother. And the point that you raised when you were talking to him was that I'm not even graduated yet. So I'm just curious, just kind of get your feedback on how valuable it was getting out there and just actually getting started versus the time that you spent learning about this in school.
So I always joke just about anywhere I talk about myself that I'm a web designer with an associate's degree who barely uses what she learned in school. I know the coding languages. The only one I ever have to use is CSS and maybe a little bit of HTML. And if you know enough of those to cause trouble, then you can work with Elementor. That's what I love, is because I know the coding languages. I don't use them. And it was incredibly valuable. So when I was in school, before I had built that site, I had this notion in my head that I had to know all the coding languages and build it all from scratch with hand coding. And I'm like, that's going to take me forever to do. I'm like one site is going to take me forever. How am I ever going to make a business out of that? And then my brother comes to me and I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's try this and let's see what I can do without knowing all the coding languages. And it was so valuable just to do it. And the risk wasn't as high because it was my brother and his business. And his website before was something he threw together on Wix. And it needed it. So it was so valuable for me because I was able to help him. And I knew that I could make it look good no matter what.
Awesome. Now, some of the other things that you do talk about are just some of the things in the back end of the business. So actually, let's first of all, before we get into that, let's talk about your business a little bit, so we just kind of understand the context that we're speaking from. So you launched your business. Yeah, can we unpack that a bit?
So losing my father and how it made me start my business.
Yeah.
So I had grown up watching. My mom was a loan processor and a closer at a bank. My dad was a maintenance engineer, and they both were on antidepressants. They would come home. My mom would cry because of something her boss did, who was a total jerk. And I knew that they were kind of unhappy with their jobs, and I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want. I also. So I learned earlier this year that I have ADHD, which totally makes so much sense in my life. I'm like, oh, now life makes sense. So I've always been that kind of like, well, I want to do what I want. I've never liked that authority of, well, I have to go get permission. I've always wanted to be the parent who could be like, oh, well, this is going on today, so I'll just take the day off, and be there. Because for me, I felt like I lost time with my father because his job, he worked different shifts. They'd rotate. So he'd have a period where he'd work in the mornings and he'd be home when I was like out of school. And then for another 6-8 weeks, he'd work in the evenings. So he'd go to work before I got out of school, and he'd get home after I was in bed. So I would see him on the weekends. And it was just the nature of his job. It sucked. It is what it is. But I felt like I lost out on some of that time that I could have had. And then losing him at 19, I'm like, I don't want my kids to feel like I wasn't there or something like that. So that's why I started my business, because being an entrepreneur really gives you the freedom to live life the way you want on your terms. And I love being a B2B type business because I can help other people create the life they love with their business.
and with that flexibility, right? Like, it's
Yes.
interesting you say these things, because now it is really common for people to not necessarily have to stay in a job they do not like and do not want to go to, because there's just so many other ways to go about building and gaining income, right? Whereas, you're looking like 20, 30 plus all those years ago, it was that 9 to 5, you do it whether you want to or not. And just to see that change in our lifestyle now, I think you have people that are happy to do what they want to do. You have people that are flexible. You have, even when it gets to the kids, you have way more parents, offering to go on these field trips, where I'm just thinking to school, like, now they have to say, okay, well, you've done it once this year, you can't do it again, because there's just, people have so much flexibility. And, I really appreciate that, because it just makes life so much easier as you're making money, right?
Yes, definitely.
Nice. That's great. So I guess we talked a little bit about it when I asked that last question, but that misconception of building, doing websites on your own. I guess, do you have anything more to say in regards to that?
So when it comes to building a website for your own business, my biggest tips are take your time, plan it out, have an idea in mind of what you want to do before you even start. And then accept that it probably won't look perfect. It's not gonna. Even now when I look at my site, I'm like, I should change that, or I don't like that anymore. I'm always going in and tweaking things, and but that's part of the fun of it, is when you build it yourself, it's easier for you to go back and mess with it a little bit, play with it, and try things. So don't be afraid to try things. And when you build it, it's not permanent until you hit publish and put it out there. And even then, people probably aren't going to find it unless you're talking about it, unless you're sharing the link, doing SEO, that kind of thing. So it's okay to play around with it and try things, see what you like, what you don't like. And the biggest thing is do your research. It's going to take time, especially if you're doing your first one on your own, but it's totally possible.
Okay.
Now, I guess, when is it time for an entrepreneur to bring in a Danielle versus trying to do it on their own?
Whenever, I would say, whenever you're making sufficient money where you know that you could afford it, and you're like, okay, I could probably afford it, and I'm starting to see a lot of traction, and I really need to do something about this website. I really need to have that more professional look, that vibe that says I'm legit. I need it to be more cohesive. And that's when it's time, is whenever you're starting to really get traction and get going, and you don't quite have enough time to devote to spending forever messing with it yourself, and you know that you could probably afford it.
All right. And, and just kind of one last thing I want to ask about websites as well. You recommend WordPress as the kind of the go-to tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just for us to all understand, why WordPress over like a GoDaddy, or actually, well, you kind of said why. What are some of the key differences between WordPress and like a GoDaddy, Squarespace, or some of the other ones that we've come to know that make it really simple just to get something up?
So while those are all great options, the reason why I love WordPress is because one of the beauties of it is it's open source, so people can contribute to it. So if someone over here has a wonderful idea for something that's going to make your life easier, they can put it up there as a plugin to aid into the website. So the plugin library for WordPress is really where the beauty of it is because that gives you all of these options of, okay, well, I need a tool to do this. Let's find a plugin that can do it. And then it's a matter of, is it a free plugin or is it a paid plugin? And most of the plugins have a free version to at least get you started. There are some that are like strictly paid. Like I pay $30 a year for Tasty Pins. It makes my life just a couple steps easier for Pinterest, and it's $30. It's that kind of thing. And I really love the Elementor builder because it makes it just as easy to build a site there as I would say probably any other platform that's easy to build. I've seen I've seen a good number of page builders for WordPress, and Elementor is my favorite. They really have a nice system. It's well thought out. So those two in combined are why it's my favorite. And WordPress is, like I said, the plugin library is what really makes it amazing because people can put up plugins. You can have businesses, so someone can make a business where they're selling their plugin. So it's not available for download through the WordPress plugin library, but you can go and you can find it and they can let you download the plugin that you upload to your site. And then you have this tool. So it really makes it this unlimited ability to customize it. And then you're not limited to what the platform has built into it, what they can do.
And, I mean, that stuff, it's interesting because even as I've watched Brian create, do things for our business and stuff, I'm like, oh boy, this is a whole nother world that I don't know if I could take on personally. So I would be calling and getting somebody like you to help me. That is for sure. I just wanted to go into email lists. And, I have a few questions in regards to that. I guess the first one is, you do hear so much like email lists, get a list, especially since, over the last year and a bit, there have been those Facebook and Instagram, blackouts, I guess you could say, right? And people are like, oh, I'm so glad I had my email list still. So there's paying ways, I guess, to go about getting them. Do you have any suggestions to create email lists without having to pay for ads?
So when it comes to not paying for ads, one of the things now, this is something that you're going to have to do. You'd have to do a little research on, but it's a great way to build it. They always say leverage other people's audiences. And you're like, well, how? Especially in the beginning, you're like, well, how am I supposed to do that? Like, what? So one of the things I love to do, and I see it a lot here lately, is a giveaway of free or paid products for either a small amount of money or it's no cost. And someone hosts it, and then you submit your freebie or like a low ticket offer of some kind of yours to it. And then everybody who participates is sharing this giveaway or this bundle to their email list. So you immediately get access to 20, 30, 40 other people's email lists at once. So that's a great way. I did one last year and I got like 400 or 500 emails out of it.
Wow.
So it is a great way. The hard part is finding them. But when you find them, getting on the email list of the person who's hosting it, and that's where they'll usually start to send out emails before they're going to do it. Hey, I'm doing this if you want to submit it. So that's a great way to do it. The other thing is, things like sharing your lead magnets on Pinterest is always good because I'm not a fan. I have this love-hate relationship with Instagram because everything is so short-lived unless it's on your feed. But Instagram tends to promote the things that are like reels. They don't tend to show people like just what shows up on your page. So I have this love-hate relationship, but I love Pinterest because it stays around forever and it just floats around. And that's one of the reasons why I love Pinterest. And the other thing that I would say is a lot of times you'll find Facebook groups where they'll have like Freebie Friday or something where they'll let you share a link to your freebie. So setting up some kind of every Monday I go into these groups at this time and I submit my links. Every Friday I go into these. That's another great way to get eyes on your stuff.
Okay. And then my other question in regards to the email list, I see what comes through in my email in the inbox, and it's like, the restaurants, bakeries, places like that, places that like sell, clothes and, different things like that. I see them, I click on it. I want to know if there's, a promo. But then what about those businesses where it's like, let's say trades, for example, or, even I guess in your line of work, can those people benefit from an email list as well?
Yes, definitely. Even if you're in like heating and air or real estate, sharing little things that help your audience. So learning what they're struggling with. So if say you're in real estate, if whether they're buying or selling is how you could classify them that way. And then from there, well, what do they need to be ready to buy a house? What do they have to have in order? Because it's a process. It's not just as simple as I want to buy a house. Okay, let's go buy one. That's your credit score and what kind of debt you've got and all these things. Or if they're selling, well, what helps them sell? Is there things that they can do that they can make sure are taken care of at their house so that it's more apt to sell quickly? So it's that kind of, even if it's just sharing a little tip here and there to kind of help them and get them to realize, oh, this is what's best. Or if you're in like heating and air, it's something like what's like proper maintenance that you should be doing for your AC units and stuff around the house, that kind of thing. So there are definitely little things, because it helps, the email list helps keep your business at the forefront of your customers' minds. So if you email them and be helpful and little things and throw in the occasional, we've got a, summer special, like HVAC, like go ahead and have your system cleaned, that kind of thing. Whatever it is, even if you're in a service industry, there's definitely a way to benefit from it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think just, there's a lot of business owners out there, maybe, who are like, oh, what can I even put out in regards to what my business is? So I'm like, I like that you clarified it, that, these email lists, they benefit everybody. And yeah, you just got to get a little creative in what it is, the content that you're putting out.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the other thing I'm curious about is some of the strategies that you share to just, I guess, optimize your time with regards to how you're running your business. Because again, you talk about just having the flexibility. You mentioned being a planner. So what are some of the things that you recommend to folks that that people find helpful in just freeing up more time?
So my favorite thing is, a few months ago, I started with Trello way back in the day. It just wasn't quite what I needed. And then I tried something called ClickUp, which was better, but I didn't love the interface and how it felt. It was just a personal thing for me, but it's a great tool. So I fell in love with Asana a few months ago. I love the interface. I love how it works. I don't feel overwhelmed. It's really clean and easy. So I have Asana set up in a way that I have color coded by different sections. So each one gets color coded with like the icon and the color for each like project on Asana. And that helps me kind of see on like the big like overview version of my calendar, helps me categorize what's going where. The other thing is, I love to set recurring tasks on Asana so I don't have to think about them. Those are my favorite thing. I'm like, oh, time for this again, So it's a set it and forget it thing. And then another thing that makes, especially my life with my ADHD, and if you know anything about ADHD, you're super forgetful. One of the things is I use Google Drive. So between Asana and Google Drive, that's really where I spend most of my time on the organization. And when I was setting up Asana, I went through Google Drive and I reorganized it to match my Asana. So if it's something that I'm going to have files stored in Google Drive related to what's in Asana, then I have the folder structure match, because then my brain doesn't have to go, well, where is it stored here versus there? Then it's always in this category. So that makes it really quick and easy. And then part of the other part of saving time is sometimes it's best to invest in a little tool here or there that can save you some time, some headache, some hassle, and then don't be such a perfectionist. I struggle with this super hardcore. I am such a perfectionist. I admit it. It's bad. But if you give yourself the grace to just, this is the best I can do without driving myself up the wall to make it perfect, and put it out there. Don't make yourself sit there and edit out every little in a video, for example. It's it helps you seem more real, more human, more natural, and less like this being up on a pedestal, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely makes you more relatable for one thing. Now, let's just talk a little bit about Asana, just so we make sure people understand exactly what it is, because I know we use it in my day job. As it stands right now, I basically get delegated stuff in there. I don't actually use it a whole lot, but essentially like a task management type tool.
Yeah. So they've got essentially, it's like, imagine like a system of like folders. You have a subfolder where you categorize it, and beneath that you have other folders, and each one of those is called a project. And within there, if you've seen Trello, and I think most people have seen Trello, you can set it up in a list view, or you can set it up in like the little columns on Trello. And from there, you've got tasks. You can set due dates and subtasks. You can assign it to people. So if you've got a team or just yourself, it really is a nice tool. I absolutely love Asana.
Right. So, and if you're an entrepreneur loading one of these, getting started on this, it's basically an opportunity to kind of do a brain dump. So everything that's in your head that's kind of all over the place out there in the ether, you can't really connect it. A tool like Asana is going to help you make those connections. So you make sure that you're following up on those tasks. You can set, and it's really, the interface is really easy to make changes. So
yeah. And one of my absolute favorite bits about Asana is that, and I think this is the only kind of project management tool like it that I've seen yet that has this option. You can take a card or a task in Asana, and you can link it to two different project boards. So that's my favorite thing is I'll have stuff where I'm like, well, this is kind of connected to this, but I want to organize it over here. So I can leave, like, for example, I have a project where all it is like standard operating procedures, SOPs, like a version of like this is how I do this. And that's something else that helps me save time, is I don't have to think about, well, what's next. If I forget, it's written down for me. I don't have to think about it. So I have a board where they all live. But then I have one for like my blog post workflow, for example. I can have that card that links to the document for my blog post workflow. I can have that in my SOP folder in that project on Asana, but I can also link it to my content board as well. So I don't have to have two cards that I have to update. So if that link ever changed, for example, I can go into that one link and then it updates it in both places. So that's one of my other absolute favorite things about Asana that I use all the time.
So it's sort of like, when I was working outside of the home and having a supervisor to be like, hey, have you done this? Have you done that? Right. Instead of having somebody over your back because, you're a business owner and nobody's going to be checking in on you.
Exactly.
This is a great place to, like you said, putting everything and just holding you accountable to make sure you get it done. Right.
Yes.
Because you're juggling so many different hats as, when you're starting off a business or just running a business on your own. So
definitely.
Yeah, really just holding yourself accountable, because again, those things that you're trying to keep all of these many things in your head.
Yeah.
Again, it's really easy to lose track of. So we should definitely be using Asana. But
I need to use Asana in my personal life, like just juggling everybody's schedule.
Well, and it's the beauty of it is, so I use it for business and for some personal stuff. I use it to manage my business bills, my personal bills. So that way I know, like, okay, this business bill is going to be charging me today. I need to go make sure that I print the receipt, kind of thing.
Okay.
For like my QuickBooks, for my my taxes and stuff. So it helps me like keep on top of that. So that way it's not December 31st and you're like, oh, I haven't done this all year. So it's really nice in that regard. And, I think I've heard something like 60% of entrepreneurs have ADHD. So it's really common to have that forgetfulness. And when you have ADHD, you have so many ideas and it's almost hard to keep track of everything. So for me, Asana is the place where I can go dump it and not have to worry about forgetting it or not write 6 million sticky notes that I will eventually lose.
Oh man, I love that. So if you haven't heard of this could be a game changer for business owners, admins, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I have something to replace my sticky notes with. So
yes, yes, we do sticky notes a lot around here.
Yeah, I used to, and I'm really bad. I mean, it's gotten a lot better with Asana, but there are still some things that I'm like, okay, I don't want to forget that this is in Asana, so I'll write a sticky note. So for me, it's that what's pertinent enough to be a sticky note versus to go into Asana for a later time.
Yeah. Okay. So I just had a question about the sales funnel, and I guess, yeah, I see that and I'm like, I don't know if I know too much about that and that term. So do you have some tips in regards to how we can make that work?
So a sales funnel is a really great tool because it helps when you get it to a point where it's optimized and it's working, you can run ads to it and it will make you money. So you typically, it starts out with a freebie, a lead magnet, whatever your preferred term is. And then it's going to offer them a low cost offer and maybe even one more before it puts them onto your email list to sell them more things that are a little bit higher cost. So typically there's a cutoff of, I think they say 200 to 300 is like the max you should ask for on the end of a sales funnel before putting them onto your email list. But I could be wrong on that figure. But it's not some like you're going to put $1,000 product at the end of your sales funnel. That's more of a put it at the end of like an email funnel after they've been with you for a little bit. And the beauty of it is when you run ads, when it's converting, you can run ads to that little low cost offer. And then when you have an order bump and like an extra item. So an order bump is that little like checkbox next to the checkout page that says, yes, please add this. Mm-hmm. And then an upsell is once they've checked out, you give them another special little offer. And when you have some of these in place and you know that they're converting well, it increases your average transaction value or your average order value. And the beauty is you can take the money you make from that and it can cover your ad cost. And sometimes you can even make extra. So it can make you an extra couple $1,000 a month on top of whatever you spend in ads. So that's one of the beauties of it is it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Once it's set up, once it's optimized, once you know it's converting like it should be, then it's just rinse and repeat and bring people in. And then it gives you a little bit more time to work on making new offers or, taking care of your clients who are, if you're in the service industry. Say you're a business coach, for example, it would give you more free time to coach one-on-one clients or do group coaching and really help them. But then you help other people where they're at to get ready to be a full paying client with you.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, the other thing I wanted to get into, so, we've had a chance to get to know you now. And for anybody who wants to work with you, I'm just going to put your website up here. It's for anybody who's listening. It's behindthescenesgenius.com. Now, can we talk about exactly what you do with your business? Obviously, web design, I would assume, is an element of it. But what is some of the work that you do in these B2B environments?
So I do web design. I also talk a little bit about organization and email lists, sales funnels, because I know that those are other big important things. The way I like to look at it is I'm the tech genius behind the scenes helping you out with your business, because I know that the tech world can be very scary for a lot of people. It's a challenge. It's a hurdle for some. So, and some people are like, this isn't my thing. I'm better at this. This is where I excel. As I say, it's your zone of genius. Well, my zone of genius is all things tech. So I do that. I am working on probably next year launching a template shop with Elementor. I know I've talked about how I hate themes, but I'm working on building a template shop with Elementor to give someone the ability to spend a little bit of money to get a pre-built website that they can then learn the tool and customize as they go. So it helps them hit the ground running a little faster, helps them look professional. And then if they want to tweak it, play with it, customize it, they then have the tools and everything they need to just go ahead and play around with it. So it gives someone the option to get going faster without having to spend months and months and months learning the tool or watching YouTube videos and Googling, how do I do this with this tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So behindthescenesgenius.com, anywhere else where we can, I know you said you do have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, but where are the other places that we can connect with you as well?
I am on Instagram. I have a Pinterest. I have just recently, in the last couple of months, started a podcast. I've called it the Solopreneur's Genius Library.
Nice.
Because I like to think of it as it's a library of all the tools that you may need. And when you need to learn something, come to the library. And I also have a Facebook group as well that I should be more active in. I'll put it that way. Life has been slightly crazy for me the last couple of months.
Oh, we totally understand.
No, I feel you. I think we all have at least, we have a couple of Facebook groups that probably should be more active in, but no, that's a real thing. All right. So Danielle, everything that you've linked for everyone who's listening and watching, it's going to be linked below wherever you're listening or watching. So we'll make sure that you guys have access to Danielle. Danielle, anything in closing before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. If you're building your website, give yourself grace, take your time. Don't beat yourself up over it.
Awesome. Well, Danielle, thank you for all the advice. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. And for everyone who listened or watched, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.